In the unexplored northern region of South Korea, a group of people sat together, waiting in silence as their expedition stretched on. The atmosphere was tense, the unknown pressing in on them from every direction. A man approached a young man in the group, offering him a cup of water. "Is this your first time on an expedition?" the man asked. The young man nodded, accepting the water. "I've been to gates and dungeons before, but this is my first time in an unexplored region. I'm a bit nervous." "You'd better mentally prepare yourself," the man warned, his voice low and serious. "These kinds of places have been left untouched for hundreds of years. They're bound to be crawling with monsters, even ancient ones." "But our expedition team leader is from the famous Martial Lee clan, right?" the young man asked, hope flickering in his voice. "I heard he's the patriarch's brother. He must be really strong." The man gave a scoff. "You mean Lee Cheol? The Martial Lee clan's 9th illegitimate son? He's nothing. Banished from the clan for his weakness. No talent, no tenacity. At his age, he's still only a 7th-rank martial artist. How can we depend on someone like that?" Just then, a masked man's voice cut through the conversation. "We'll be moving again. Expedition team leader." Lee Cheol, standing nearby, responded quietly. "All right." But something about the situation felt off. The Shadow Sword Squad, a direct affiliate squad of the Martial Lee clan's patriarch, was supposed to be protecting them. Yet, an uneasy feeling lingered in the air. Lee Cheol's thoughts wandered. There was a time when he had dreams, when he first realized the weight of being part of the Martial Lee clan. Back then, he was chosen by the highest-ranked weapon during the steel selection ritual. It felt like a sign that if he worked hard and sought acknowledgement, one day he might be recognized. But reality was cruel. A master had once examined him, marveling at the strange nature of his mana paths. They were unsuited for magic, and his martial arts would lack stability. The master had declared that reaching the 9th rank would be a miracle for Lee Cheol. When word of his condition spread, his achievement at the steel selection ritual was dismissed as a fluke, a mistake. Even so, Lee Cheol trained harder than anyone, managing to reach the 7th rank by the age of 25. He was genuinely happy, even if his siblings had reached that rank as minors. That joy, however, didn't last. At 30, he was cast out of the clan. If not for his older brother, he would have left as a corpse. Since then, he had been on the run for 10 years. In that time, chaos spread across the land. The unexplored regions expanded, and monster invasions grew more frequent. Meanwhile, his father, the pinnacle of martial arts and patriarch of the Martial Lee clan, passed away. Suddenly, a voice called out, "Young Master Lee Cheol!" Startled, Lee Cheol turned. It was the Shadow Sword Squad. "How did you find me?" They said nothing, merely handing him a decree. He sighed. Of course, they ignored his question. Another mission, a cursed bloodline that refused to release him. It was a mission order. Investigate the B1 zone of the unexplored region and join the expedition team by 1830. It was signed by Patriarch Lee Gunsong. Lee Cheol's mind reeled. Had his third brother become the patriarch? Then what happened to the eldest? He asked, but the Shadow Sword Squad ignored him again. "What's the point of sending me to the unexplored region?" Lee Cheol muttered bitterly. "I haven't even held a sword in 10 years. I'm a 7th-rank martial artist at that." He crumpled the decree in his hand. The Shadow Sword Squad drew their swords. "Will you refuse to carry out your orders?" He knew the consequences. I'll do it." Without a word, they disappeared in a flash of lightning. Later, they were deep in the forest when one of the men noticed an abandoned building. "What the? An abandoned building here? And it's so well preserved, too." The Shadow Sword Squad gave a single order. "We're going inside." Swords drawn, they entered cautiously, unaware of the horror within. Inside lay the corpse of an ancient monster, massive and grotesque, its presence suffocating. "Found it," one of the Shadow Sword members said coldly. "Begin." "Begin what?" one of the men asked, but before he could finish, the Shadow Sword's blades sliced clean through his neck. Panic erupted. The remaining men shouted, demanding to know what was happening. But the Shadow Sword Squad began cutting them down one by one. "You were dead from the start," a member sneered. "Consider yourselves honored to be used for the clan's goodwill." Furious, Lee Cheol drew his sword and killed one of the Shadow Sword members. "Who's behind this?" "The liege," the assassin answered. "We were ordered to bring you all here and kill you cleanly, if you didn't resist." Even with a gaping wound, the Shadow Sword's body began to heal. One of the men attacked the assassin, yelling that he must die, but he was slain in a flash of lightning. "How pathetic," the assassin muttered, turning his gaze to Lee Cheol. "I expected better from someone with even half the blood of the Martial Lee clan." Lee Cheol dropped to his knees, gasping for air, blood dripping from his lips. Another slash sent him sprawling. Blood covered his body. Desperate, he prayed. He couldn't die like this. He spotted a sword at a distance, a weapon powerful enough to slay a great monster. It had been left there for years, but it should still be usable. Crawling toward it, he reached out and it vanished into thin air. The assassin scoffed. I didn't imagine a Lee clan member could be so pathetic. I'll send you off like a Lee at least. Another blow struck him. Lee Cheol's mind began to fade. The heavens were so cruel. Was this really the end? A life spent struggling, running, a series of failures. If only he had another chance. Memories flooded back. His father's voice asking about Yoo-jung's fate. A physician explaining that she was already dead when they found her. He saw his father, a younger butler Choi, and a small baby's hand, his own hand. And then, darkness. Lee Cheol's mind stirred, caught between confusion and disbelief. What's going on? He wondered. Is this reincarnation? Or just a flashback of my life before? He remembered a conversation clearly, his father's deep, commanding voice suggesting a name for him. Young would be a good childhood name for him, his father had said. Lee Cheol could still recall the exact words, the air thick with authority as his father issued instructions to the butler. Like the other children, assign him a handmaid and some members from the Shadow Sword Squad as guards, and have him attend the steel selection ritual with the 8th child. The butler, taken aback, had hesitated. Immediately, sir? He isn't ready, and the 8th miss is still a few months older. But the patriarch was unmoved. It should not matter. I'll be taking my leave. Lee Cheol, or rather, the infant version of himself, had been lying in his crib then, his tiny face pulled into a sad, pouting expression, unaware of what awaited him. As expected of father, Lee Cheol thought now, a chill settling over him. I haven't seen him in so long, but that pressure, and that conversation, it really did happen. I don't want to believe it, but if this is real, have I regressed to the damn past? As those memories weighed on him, the day of the steel selection ritual arrived once again, the martial Lee clan's most honored tradition. It was the day when the clan's children displayed their potential, chosen by the weapons themselves. Each weapon would resonate with the talent of its rightful heir. His father had once been selected by dozens of swords, becoming the finest swordsman of his generation. His eldest brother had been chosen by swords, tomes, and even a staff, a prodigy renowned for both magic and swordsmanship. And now, it was his turn. A young maid, Manhwa, carefully dressed the infant Lee Cheol. She cooed softly as she adjusted his robes, smiling at how calm he was. "Oh, our dear young master is dressed so well," she said, lifting him gently into her arms. "He's in a new environment, yet he isn't crying at all. How mature. I'm sure you'll get a good result." As she held him close, a gentle warmth spread through Lee Cheol. Gawa. He remembered her vividly. She had been like a mother to him in his lonely, difficult childhood. The one person who stayed by his side, wept for his isolation, and comforted him. She had been driven out by his other brother's hatred. An injustice Lee Cheol had never forgotten. "Not this time," he vowed silently. "I won't let it happen again. I'll protect her, no matter what it takes." Another maid entered, bowing politely. "Young master, the preparations are all ready." Manhwa smiled. "Shall we depart?" Soon, the butler approached the patriarch. "Patriarch, the preparations have been completed." The patriarch gave a curt nod. "All right, let's go." The steel selection ritual was a grand event, and the martial Lee clan's grounds buzzed with activity. Noble figures, ministers, and esteemed guests filled the area. A crowd gathered for the ceremony. Among them stood the clan's matriarch Baek Hwayeon, Minister Lee Tae-hong, the first child Lee Myung-jung, and the third child Lee Gun-song. Their gazes settled on the infant Lee Cheol, and the low murmur of gossip spread among them. "Isn't that the illegitimate child brought in from outside?" one of them whispered. Minister Lee Tae-hong eyed the infant. "He's quite young." Lee Myung-jung frowned. "I don't remember any of us participating at that age. Isn't that Gun-song's doing?" Lee Gun-song gave a dismissive shrug. "I guess so. I don't know where he came from, but I'm intrigued." The patriarch standing before the gathered crowd lifted his arm. His voice rang out with authority. "Let the steel selection ritual begin. Bring Hwa here." A maid gently brought forward a young girl. The patriarch picked her up, setting her down on a soft cushion. From his robe, he drew a small knife and made a shallow cut on her finger. The child whimpered in pain as blood dripped onto the altar. The assembled weapons stirred. Among them, the relic-rank sword of utmost prestige, the ivory sword, long unresponsive to anyone for generations, shuddered and began to glow. It had chosen her. The maids bowed deeply. Congratulations, miss. Another talented child has been born to the family. It's a true occasion for the clan. The matriarch Bayek Hwayon nodded in satisfaction. Thank you. The patriarch gave a sharp command. And continuing, Young's ritual will commence. The murmurs began anew. It's him, the illegitimate child from outside, right? Someone scoffed. Tsk. How could a bastard be allowed to participate in the ritual? Ignoring them, the patriarch approached the infant Lee Cheol, lifting him carefully. With a small knife, he made a cut on the child's finger, his expression unreadable. But there was a certain pride in his eyes. Lee Cheol, or Lee Young, as he was named then, felt a strange calm settle over him. So this time has come. In the past, I was chosen by the clear echo, a heaven-ranked sword. If so, in this life? His thoughts trailed off as the ritual reached its critical moment. The maids whispered amongst themselves, their eyes stealing cautious glances toward the matriarch. She seems to be in a bad mood, one murmured. Minister Lee Tae-hong, observing the scene, muttered quietly, a hidden son of my brother. Well, it's only natural. A pitiful fate lies ahead for that child. It'll be hard to survive as an illegitimate child. Just then, the head elder, Lee Cheol-jung, approached and patted him firmly on the shoulder. You seem to hold quite an interest in the illegitimate child, he remarked. Minister Lee Tai-hong's expression stiffened. This purist, close-minded old man. Forcing a smile, he respectfully greeted him. I greet the head elder. Lee Tai-hong could not easily read Cheol-jung's intentions and knew it wise to stay alert. Cheol-jung spoke, his gaze fixed on the young boy. That's the child the patriarch brought in, yes? Yes, Minister Lee Tae-hong replied. The Shadow Sword Squad discovered him and brought him here. Cheol-jung let out a low hum. I just don't understand what the patriarch is thinking. A bastard child, born from who knows where, allowed to participate in the steel selection ritual. You've experienced it yourself, haven't you? The ritual is of no use for illegitimate children. Lee Tai-hong's face darkened, his hand forming into a clenched fist. What did you just say? Cheol-jung smirked. Ah, my apologies. I seem to recall the famous story, how you, another illegitimate child, failed to be selected by even a single weapon. His words cut deep. In the end, a bastard's child is a bastard's child. He must know his place. With a sharp clang, Cheol-jung struck the ground with his sword, causing a brief hush. I'll not tolerate such insults any further, Lee Tae-hong barked. But before the quarrel could escalate, both men's attention snapped toward the platform, their expressions shifting to shock. Lee Cheol-jung's eyes widened. How can this happen? Minister Lee Tae-hong, a twisted satisfaction curling his lips, muttered, I'm seeing this with my own eyes, yet it bewilders me. Before them, weapon after weapon resonated in response to Lee Young's blood. Masterwork, sanguine spirit spears, iron-welded blades, relic-grade divine swords like Mahu, and even the responsive dragon, a relic crossbow, all stirred at once. The impossible scene unfolded. Even weapons with existing owners trembled toward him. First child Lee Myong-jung watched in disbelief. Gunshong, can you believe this? Our youngest brother must have some truly unbelievable talent. Gunshong nodded slightly. It appears so. The gathered crowd buzzed with alarmed whispers. Is something wrong? How could this be? An illegitimate child shouldn't be capable of this. Yet no one could deny what they saw. The steel selection ritual, sacred and infallible, could not be wrong. Patriarch Lee Jungryong raised his hand. Silence. The assembly fell quiet. According to the laws of our clan, he declared, all weapons that have chosen Young rightfully belong to him. However, the situation is not simple. I will accept suggestions. Minister Lee Tae-hong raised his hand. I have a suggestion. Yes, Minister? Speak. Even if it is the law of our clan, bestowing all these weapons upon him goes against the meaning of the steel selection ritual, which must continue for generations. How about we allow him to choose a single armament for himself? The patriarch considered it. Not bad. I'll take your suggestion. He then turned toward Lee Young. Now, my son, pick. Which weapon would you like? Lee Young, his mind alert despite his infant form, grasped the gravity of this moment. I don't know why this is different from my past life, but this is good for me. I'll make the most of this. Before him were weapons of legend. Frach, the dragon-slaying sword, the holy spear, forged from the remains of a sainted white whale. Valheim, a staff born from the world tree where Fae slumber, and the celestial sword, forged at the hour when sun, moon, and stars aligned. Weapons beyond measure awaited his decision. The patriarch pointed out one weapon in particular. That sword, it was discovered by our founder in unexplored lands, covered in dust and veiled in mystery. No one has ever unlocked its hidden power. Black Twilight. It's been kept alongside our heaven-level weapons as a symbol of its connection to our founder. Not a single one of my ancestors was chosen by it. Is this a meaningless decision made by a newborn? Or could it be the will of the heavens? Li Young's gaze fell on Black Twilight, and with that, his choice was clear. The patriarch held him up high. Li Young has chosen Black Twilight. The steel selection ritual was officially concluded. At the back, matriarch Baek Hwayong's expression soured as she watched the scene. Li Young, the illegitimate, what a nuisance. If it gets in the way, I'll have no choice but to remove it. 9 years had passed. The seasons had cycled in quiet repetition within the vast estate of the esteemed Marshall Lee clan. Now a soft light filtered through the morning mist as Li Young prepared to head out for training. He stood at the entrance to his quarters, calling out calmly, "Nanny, I'm going now." At once, Moongawa's voice reached him, laced with worry. "Oh my, young master, let me come with you." But Li Young, indifferent, dismissed the offer with a shake of his head. "I'll go by myself." Still, the old woman, ever protective, followed after him with hurried steps. "But the other training zones are empty. Why are you going to Zone 1? Without looking back, Li Young answered coolly, "There's something waiting for me there." As they crossed the grounds, the sharp sounds of swords clashing and practice shouts drifted toward them from another training area. Baek Hwayeon, the clan's 8th child, was instructing a younger girl in Zone 7. "You'll hurt your hand holding your sword like that. Do it again. A vertical slice," Hwayeon ordered firmly. Li Young cast a passing glance toward the scene. "So it's the 8th, he murmured. Moongawa tensed beside him and hastily scolded, "Young master, you must call her older sister. If anyone hears you..." "Ch!" Li Young clicked his tongue. "We're only 5 months apart. Older sister my..." Though harsh, his tone carried neither jealousy nor fear, only cold detachment, as if cutting himself off from what should have been sibling ties. At that moment, the girl being instructed protested irritably. "Seriously, sir, why do you keep nagging me like this?" Her small hands clenched tightly, her face flushed with anger. The instructor spoke gently, trying to soothe her. "It's for your own good, young lady. Please calm yourself. If you keep practicing, you'll improve." Li Young pointed toward the man. "Who's that poor guy anyway?" Moongawa, though hesitant, answered honestly, "That's Commander Baek Lee Hyun of the Ebony Squad." "A commander, huh?" Li Young scoffed. "A waste of talent teaching a 9-year-old. Moongawa sighed heavily. "I wish a teacher worthy of your skill would appear soon too, young master." "Whatever," Li Young muttered. Guilt flickered in the old woman's voice. "Forgive me for not looking after you properly. While young lady Hua eats nutrient-filled baby food, you..." "Stop," Li Young cut in firmly. "You're doing this again. I told you. I'm always grateful to you." Moongawa's eyes misted over. "And besides," Li Young continued quietly, "I don't need teachers like them. Those people cling to this clan's name and prestige. I've already got good teachers." Leaving her behind, he made his way toward Zone 1. The esteemed Marshall Hall stood there. Old, vast, and mostly abandoned. Once, it had echoed with countless footsteps, but now few came here. The old weapons inside were faded relics of the past. Stepping into the dusty hall, Li Young scanned the room until something caught his eye. "Ah, there it is." He reached for a sword resting on a stand, its hilt worn from long use. "Should I use this one today?" Ever since his regression 9 years ago, Li Young had awakened a strange ability. He could read the memories embedded in objects, especially weapons. Focusing, he let his mind open to the sword's lingering echoes. "The basics," he murmured. "They're the same whether it's beginner's swordsmanship or advanced forms, top to bottom. What did this sword remember?" The older the weapon, the clearer its memories. Li Young had long grown adept at tracing those remnants. Gripping the sword, he took his stance. 7-star sword, first form, Crimson Wind. His blade cut through the air, clean and precise. "Phew," he exhaled, satisfied. Finally completed the 7-star sword. For the past 2 years, Li Young had silently mastered nearly every technique held within these forgotten weapons. "Very good," he nodded, pleased. "It's been a while since the 7-star form felt this right." Just then, a familiar presence appeared behind him. "Uncle," Li Young greeted without turning. Li Tae-hong stood at the entrance, broad-shouldered, his face marked by years on the battlefield. Though not of the main bloodline, he was one of the clan's most respected martial artists, and one of the few relatives who had ever truly cared for Li Young. I greet you, uncle, Li Young said respectfully. Taehong smiled faintly, ruffling the boy's hair. No need for such formality. He studied the boy for a moment, his expression a mix of pride and regret. I always see you here when I pass by the training grounds. It can't be easy enduring the others' coldness, but you've grown up well. I'm proud of you. I'm fine, Li Young replied firmly. I'm a son of the esteemed Marshal Li clan. I'll prove myself. That's right, Taehong nodded. Prove it with the sword. That is our clan's way. I will, Li Young promised, with my own strength. The older man's gaze lingered on him. Why did this child have to be born illegitimate? He thought bitterly. Such talent. Those eyes. After a pause, Taehong spoke. You're nearing the age for your naming ceremony. I'd like to be your teacher for it. But Li Young immediately shook his head. I cannot accept, uncle. Taehong raised an eyebrow. Huh? You don't want me as your teacher? It's not that, Li Young said calmly. There's a rule forbidding me from having a teacher before my naming ceremony. I don't want to put you in a difficult position. Taehong's face darkened. Your siblings bend rules all the time, hoarding teachers, resources, eating delicacies while you... Even so, Li Young interrupted, his gaze steady. I believe rules should be kept. I'll prove myself without breaking them. Taehong was silent, staring at the boy's resolute face, those eyes, just like his father's. He sighed, giving in. You're stubborn as ever. A faint smile touched Li Young's lips. All right then, Taehong conceded. Is there something else you want? Li Young's eyes gleamed. Actually, yes. I've been waiting for you to ask. Oh? Taehong asked curiously. What is it? Without hesitation, Li Young made his request. I want to see what's under the secret warehouse. The words made Taehong's expression freeze, shock flashing in his eyes. The car came to a halt at the gate. A stern-faced guard stepped forward and demanded, State your identity and the purpose of your visit. Li Taehong didn't hesitate. I am General Li Taehong, he declared firmly. This is just a routine inventory check. He gestured toward the passenger seat beside him. With me is the youngest of the esteemed Marshal Li clan, Li Young. He's here on a field trip. The guard's eyes narrowed slightly, but after a moment of scrutiny, he nodded. Loyalty verified. You may enter. The gate swung open and the vehicle rolled forward into the sprawling compound. Li Young pressed his face close to the window, feigning awe. Wow, so that's the great warehouse, he murmured, eyes wide. Li Taehong glanced at him through the rearview mirror, a knowing smirk tugging at his lips. Are you really that excited? Of course, Li Young replied eagerly. The secret warehouse is where all the family's greatest treasures are stored. In his mind, he added silently, the item I'm searching for is in there too. Weapons of legend, ancient relics whose very existence was often dismissed as myth. Those who sought such impossible treasures said only one place held them all, the esteemed Marshal Li clan's secret warehouse. The basement of the secret warehouse holds weapons sealed for countless reasons, Li Taehong explained as they approached the massive building. Li Young's eyes sparkled. I heard there are monster-level weapons that consume their owners. A shadow of a smile crossed Taehong's face. Yes, you're well informed. Just holding such a weapon can devour both your body and your heart. Are you scared? Taehong asked, his gaze steady. Not at all, Li Young answered confidently. Don't worry, even we can't enter such a dangerous place, Taehong said with a calm finality. I'll conduct my business from upstairs. You take your time looking around. Yes, uncle, Li Young replied, letting out a quiet sigh. It's not easy, pretending to be an innocent kid. He recalled what he had learned. The secret warehouse's basement, also known as the graveyard of weapons, was where countless relics lay sealed, and the reason he had come this far was to find a specific weapon. Boundless. Normally shaped like a dagger, it could change length, shape, weight, and other properties freely when infused with mana. Lee Gunsong, who had discovered Boundless in this secret warehouse before Li Young's regression, had earned the title Ever-Changing because of the weapon's overwhelming irregularity and diversity. That very title had propelled Lee Gunsong, the clan's third child, to become patriarch instead of the eldest, the expected heir. Lee Gunsong had later found Li Young in hiding and purged him. That much was all Li Young knew for now. To prevent history from repeating itself, there was one task he must accomplish: find Boundless first. It would take time, but he would search every weapon until he found it. He tried one dagger after another, but none was the right one. Ha, Li Young muttered, frustrated. I've been checking every dagger-looking weapon for an hour now. Still no sign of Boundless, but it has to be here somewhere. He scanned the rows of weapons meticulously. Then he noticed a display stand in the corner and walked toward it. Among the rusted relics, something caught his eye. Picking it up, he frowned. It's so rusty. How did it get this bad? Suddenly, a strange sensation washed over him. Why now? He wondered, confusion tightening his chest. Where was he? Without warning, his surroundings shifted. He was no longer in the warehouse, but transported somewhere else entirely. This must be a memory inside that rusty dagger, Li Young thought, astonished. It feels different from the other weapon memories I've read before. So vivid, as if I truly exist here. Before him rose an overwhelming presence, primal and terrifying, a monster ancient enough to make nature itself recoil. From a blue vortex emerged a creature of apocalypse-level terror, one that had swallowed entire civilizations long ago. I'm going to die, Li Young thought in horror. There's no way I can fight or defeat that. I have to run. He felt something move behind him. He tumbled to the ground, startled. When did he get behind me? A single blade stroke flashed, powerful enough to split his enemy cleanly in two. Chaos erupted everywhere. No way, Li Young breathed, astonished. He defeated it with one strike? His mind raced back to the earlier figure. The person stepped forward and spoke sharply. Who are you? Li Young froze. He saw me. The stranger's voice softened, but was still resolute. Why are you here? Out of mercy, I will send you away painlessly. No, Li Young whispered, refusing. Suddenly, he was pulled back to reality, emerging from the memory. What was that scene just now? He asked himself, breathless. The crushing pressure that had weighed down his entire body still lingered, as real as if it had happened moments ago. He looked at the dagger again and carefully sliced his finger. I will become the master of the 10,000 soldiers, he declared with quiet determination. Testing a few sword movements, he grinned widely. I've found boundless. Happiness bloomed within him like a long-awaited victory. Li Young let out a deep sigh of frustration. Another failure. It had been a week since he obtained Boundless, the dagger-like weapon he found in the underground secret warehouse. To avoid drawing attention, he had transformed Boundless into a ring and now kept it hidden on his hand. Yet the memory of that mysterious moment still haunted him. What was that back then? He muttered to himself. The movement, the technique, that man had used was called the Split Demon. The man had only shown him the technique briefly, probably thinking it was too early for Li Young to learn it fully. Despite the overwhelming power behind the move, the gracefulness of that man's movements left Li Young awestruck. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't replicate it, but he reminded himself not to rush. Before his regression, he had been an outcast, unable even to inherit the family's basic martial arts techniques. Now, even if it was just one advanced technique, this was his first real taste of progress. He could do this. He could remember how the man moved. Yet there was one issue. Li Young was only a 9-year-old child. Trying to mimic the movements of a fully grown adult wouldn't be effective. Instead, he needed to adapt the technique naturally to fit his body. He steadied himself and said quietly, All right, I think I've got the hang of it now. The next challenge was solving the problem of mana utilization. No matter how many times he tried to replicate the way mana was used in that memory, he always failed. It felt as if he was forgetting something crucial. There was no other option but to keep trying. Just as he prepared to begin practice again, a voice interrupted him. Child, where did you learn that skill? Li Young looked up to see a girl with dark hair and brown eyes. She must be a direct descendant of the esteemed Marshall Li clan. Who are you? He asked, curious. The girl appeared surprised. Me? You don't know me? I guess you might not. I don't really go outside often. She smiled faintly. What's your name? Young, he replied. Yol? What a unique name. I'm Li Gyongha. Nice to meet you. Recognition flashed through Li Young's mind. She was his youngest aunt, Li Gyongha. He recalled what his uncle Li Taehong had said about her before his regression. She was different from the others, someone their grandfather disliked. Gyongha eyed him carefully. More importantly, you seem rather fragile. Li Young suddenly collapsed to the ground, frustrated. Why can't she consider the possibility that I'm stupidly strong, he thought. So, child, she said, crouching beside him, where did you learn that skill? Why do you ask? He asked warily. What you just used was ancient martial arts. I really, really love old martial arts. That's why I'm curious. Ancient monsters lived long ago too, you know. Anyway, here's a gift. She extended her hands, holding out a diary. A gift? Li Young blinked in surprise. Yeah, open it. Li Young flipped through the diary. The handwriting was difficult to read, but inside were notes on mana techniques and martial arts, many of them at a very high level. He had thought the rumors about his aunt weren't true, but now he wasn't so sure. "What is this?" he read aloud carefully. Gyeongha smiled faintly. "Oh, that part? Those are old mana techniques based on the mana paths. Back in the past, only mana paths were used, not mana circles, which are the basis of modern mana techniques. Nowadays, mana is stored in the heart. But is it right to treat the old mana techniques as garbage?" Lee Young shook his head. "I never thought about it that way. Maybe those old mana techniques were better than what we have now. That's probably why so few records remain. I've been researching amplification and transformation techniques, boundless mana techniques." Suddenly, Lee Young jumped up and started running, calling back to her, "Wait! Lee Gyeongha, hold on." "Huh? What is it?" she asked. Lee Young explained rapidly. "Mana spreads from the mana circle throughout the body, but the man's technique rejected the mana trying to return to the mana circle and only used the mana paths. That's the mana utilization technique I couldn't understand before. This will work." His heart raced as he concentrated, and finally, it happened. "I did it. It was a success." Gyeongha caught him in her arms, her eyes wide with surprise. "That was an amplification technique, right?" "Yes." "How did you do it?" Lee Young shrugged. "I just did it." "But how? Why do I have to tell you that?" Gyeongha's eyes softened. "You figured it out with the notebook I gave you. That notebook's all I read. I've been searching for a way to use it for over 10 years, even after I was kicked out. Please, what do I have to do for you to tell me?" Lee Young paused, then said seriously, "Promise me 3 things." "All right, what are they?" she asked. "First, don't talk about me to anyone unless I give you permission, even to my eldest brother and father." "Why?" "I don't like the idea of people talking about me." She nodded in understanding. "Okay, I'm the same way." Lee Young noticed a trace of sadness in her expression. "Second, don't lie to me anymore. We need to trust each other. I'll tell you the truth too." Gyeongha agreed quietly. All right, what's the last one?" Lee Young took a deep breath, preparing to reveal his final condition. 1 year later, Lee Young was deep in his practice when Nanny Moongawa suddenly came running, calling out his name. "Lee Young!" she called, handing him a letter. "Take a look at this." Curious, Lee Young glanced over her shoulder as Lee Gyeongha appeared behind him. He carefully opened the letter and found it was a summons order for the naming ceremony issued by the proxy patriarch Lee Myung-jung. "Is father not home right now?" "I didn't hear anything about an expedition," Lee Young asked. Nanny Moongawa grabbed her hair in frustration. "A naming ceremony? What's wrong with it?" Lee Young questioned. "I finally got the hang of it," she said softly. Her voice edged with emotion. "I need your guidance more than ever right now. You'll have to stay for a while if you go to the naming ceremony." "No, don't go." Lee Young took a deep breath. "It's been a year since the deal. We've been researching mana techniques all this time. The modern ones that use mana circles as their core, the ancient ones based on mana paths, and even a few that combine both. Aunt Gyeongha said successfully combining them was her dream. By accumulating mana, transforming its traits within the mana circle, and controlling and utilizing it through mana paths, I've been able to use mana more efficiently than others my age." Gyeongha's voice trembled slightly as she pleaded, "Do you have to go? Can't you stay? Studying mana techniques is more fun." Lee Young smiled faintly but shook his head. "You know I have to go, but don't worry, it won't be long and I'll continue our work while I'm away." "How?" "You'll be super busy with lessons," Gyeongha said, eyes full of concern. "I'll continue training, researching mana techniques, and recovering ancient knowledge all at the same time," Lee Young promised. Their training had already begun when the Blood Tiger Squad's group leader, Instructor Jangwook, addressed the students. "We will begin today's training now. First, you will endure magic attacks for 30 minutes. Jangwook silently thought to himself as he watched Lee Young. He had expected the boy to fail immediately. After all, Lee Young had never received even the most basic training. Yet now, the child was using his mana techniques to deflect every attack. The boy was pushing himself harder than the 8th daughter to prove his skill, demanding more challenging lessons. But he was only a 10-year-old illegitimate child. Dismayed at his own prejudice, Jangwook muttered, "Calling him an illegitimate child after seeing this would be rude. I'd better reflect on my past behavior. I will do my best to teach him everything I can. This will be more than just lessons for the naming ceremony." After the exhausting training, Lee Young stretched his body and sighed. "I'm done." Ah, what an insane household. Throwing a kid into a device that constantly activates magic attacks to build resistance. I didn't expect an apology for it. I did notice their tone toward me is changing, though. First, I'll rest a bit. Suddenly, Lee Hua appeared, calling out sharply, "Hey, we need to talk." Lee Young pushed her hand away. What are you trying to do right now? Watch your mouth, Li Hua snapped. I'm a legitimate child and you're not. I'm also 1 year older than you. In a calm, steady voice, Li Young replied, I don't want to deal with this. I don't have time to talk. Li Hua's frustration boiled over. Don't ignore me! She unleashed Mana in anger, but Li Young quickly grabbed her by the collar and choked her. If you want to whine and cry, go do it in your mother's arms. I'm busy enough, don't bother me. He released her, and she shouted, This is all your fault. Because of what you did at the steel selection ritual, I'm always compared to you. Why can't you just screw off and be invisible like any other illegitimate child? It's not fair. I can't even sleep at night. I don't get snacks. I'm always training. But you were just born talented. I didn't want to, but mother... She stopped herself. Li Young stared coldly. You can't sleep? Then don't sleep. If you can't catch up to me, even by skipping snacks, then stop eating. If you resent me, then do whatever it takes to surpass me. Then you can get an apology from me. That's how this family works. Li Hua clenched her fist and spat. Arrogant. Yelling back, she declared, All right, I'm going to do so much better than you at the naming ceremony. I'll make sure you beg for forgiveness. Don't forget that. Li Young smiled. Yeah, I'll be looking forward to it. At the Section 7 training hall, reserved only for those of direct lineage, Baek Hwayeon was greeted by the maids. Leave us. I must talk to my daughter, Baek Hwayeon instructed. Yes, ma'am, the maids replied, stepping away. Baek Hwayeon found Li Hua practicing. What are you doing? Li Hua looked up, surprised. Mother, I was training. Baek Hwayeon frowned. I heard how you lost. I'm sure I told you. You should break your rivals. I'm disappointed in you. You'd better quit this too if you're just doing it to avoid getting lectured. I don't even want to lecture you anymore. Li Hua responded firmly. I know. That's why you think I'm training. But I'm training because I want to. Baek Hwayeon's eyes narrowed. What? Li Hua said, I will beat him no matter what. Not because you told me to, but because I want to. I'll do this on my own. Baek Hwayeon's face hardened. You mean to tell me you're motivated by some child? You're a legitimate child of the Li clan. You and he have fundamentally different standings. You winning against him should be a given, but instead, you're motivated by him. She handed Li Hua a vial containing a lethal poison called dreamlike trance. Baek Hwayeon's voice was cold and resolute. If you can't surpass him, then trample him. That is this family's way. Moongawa shook her head in disbelief. This makes no sense, she muttered. Li Young glanced at her, a small smile playing on his lips. What do you think, Nanny? No more worries now. Moongawa looked at him with warmth. I haven't done anything for you, young master, yet you've done so well. Li Young shook his head. You haven't done anything? Don't say that. Just then, Li Gaiyonghwa came running over, cheerful and full of energy. Baby, let's go training. Li Young yawned. I just finished training. That's why we have to go. Training your mana arts helps relieve your fatigue, she said, grinning. I've never heard of such an effect, Li Young replied skeptically. It's true, probably, Li Gaiyonghwa said with a nod. Li Young shrugged. Well, it's fine. I had something to show you. Her eyes widened in surprise. What? You have attained your first star? Li Young began explaining. Normally, you have to undergo 3 stages of mana arts. The Iron Body stage, where you strengthen your body, the Qihong stage, where you change the nature of your work mana, and the Extraordinary Ability stage, where you demonstrate supernatural abilities through mana. But Ant's mana arts are different. Even if it's the same first stage, you can do different things and show more abilities. That's why her mana arts are divided into stages of the stars. Li Gaiyonghwa nodded approvingly. Perfect, that's definitely 1 star. Isn't it awkward learning how to use your mana paths? I thought it'd take another year. Li Young shook his head. I learned how to use them while getting lessons. Even thinking back, the training was crazy. I failed at mana control, and the balance of my mana circle and mana paths was almost shattered. I should have just left. Mana flows naturally like water after all. Turns out, our body itself is a vehicle for the mana. Li Gaiyonghwa's eyes brightened. A vehicle for mana? Baby, I think I can do it too. It might take a long time, but I think I can. Li Young smiled quietly. At least she realized it. Thanks so much, my lucky baby, she said, hugging him tightly. Li Young winced. Kuk, my ribs. Perfect. Now then, let's move on to 2 stars, Li Gaiyonghwa said with determination. Li Young groaned. I thought I was about to die. What you achieved is 1 star, but you know that's different from the traditional first stage, right? She asked. I know, he replied. Then what do you think you're best at? She asked curiously. Li Young began to answer. What I'm best at? I think the Sawo. He was cut off. Li Gaiyonghwa shook her head. I don't think so. Li Young frowned. You've never seen me in swordsmanship training, though. I have, a few times when I was bored, she said with a smirk. So what I'm saying is, I think you have an ability more outstanding than your swordsmanship. It's hard to explain, but your greatest ability is your mana arts. Li Young blinked. That caught him off guard. Li Gaiyonghua continued, your talent for mana arts is incredible to the point where everything else dims in comparison. Nobody was actually able to follow the mana arts I taught in the past. He thought to himself, a talent for mana? I was ridiculed in my last life because I couldn't use mana. That's why I don't think attaining 2 stars will be difficult for you, she said firmly. And if you succeed at that, the naming ceremony will be a piece of cake for you. Okay, from now on, I'll teach you proper techniques, so focus. Okay, but Aunt, Li Young asked, noticing something beside her. What is that? Li Gaiyonghua smiled and held up several small metal marbles. Oh, this? They are metal marbles. You need to be able to move while releasing mana, since using mana arts while staying still is no different from dead mana arts. Now then, shall we begin? At the training hall, the Blood Tiger Squad's leader, Li Junquan, stood before the gathered students. From now on, I will teach you the esteemed martial Li clan's secret techniques. Choose the weapon you use and come. I'll give you 1 minute. Don't dawdle. Yes, sir, the students replied and scattered to pick their weapons. Li Young and Li Hua bickered quietly. Oh gosh, what are you staring at? You have something to say? Li Young asked. Who's staring? I have nothing to say, Li Hua retorted. Hey, you use a sword too. Nope, Li Young answered. Li Hua looked confused. What? But every time you train in weapon arts, you definitely… Li Junquan interrupted sharply. What are you doing? Li Young replied, You told me to choose a weapon and come, so I did. Li Junquan's eyes narrowed. I definitely told you to bring the weapon you use. These are the ones I use, Li Young said calmly. Li Junquan sighed heavily. I thought you weren't dumb, but turns out you're a complete idiot. He raised his voice. Remember what I'm going to say from now on. I said I'll teach you the clan's secret techniques, but I'm not teaching you the postures or skills. There are many secret arts called enlightenment in the esteemed martial Li clan. In order to learn those secret arts, you need the basics. You need to awaken the 6th sense, sleeping in your blood. I will awaken your sense now. Don't have too hard of a time waking up your 6th sense. Li Hua looked worried. What is he gonna do? Li Junquan warned. If you don't want to get knocked unconscious from the beginning, prepare yourself. He suddenly lunged at Li Young to knock him down, but Li Young blocked the attack. Prepared, Li Young muttered, his mind already bracing for the intense training ahead. Shit, I think I'll have to do this crazy stuff again. I didn't receive this training properly before I regressed, but this life will be different. The training had been going on for a month now. Both Li Hua and Li Young gave their all, attempting repeatedly to knock down their training master, Li Junquan, but all efforts were in vain. Li Young reflected on the harshness of the regimen. The training was so grueling that bones felt as if they might break, and internal injuries were common. It was far from the kind of training any 10-year-old should endure, yet he was determined not to complain. Slowly but surely, he was starting to get the hang of it. Li Hua, catching her breath after another failed attempt, asked if she had passed out again. Li Young confirmed it was the 22nd time for her, though he himself had fainted 16 times. She lamented that she wasn't prepared, while their master observed quietly. Li Junquan noted that Li Hua had an exceptionally sturdy body. Despite his hard attacks, she had never suffered serious injury. As for Li Young, although he initially seemed foolish when he brought an armful of weapons, it was clear he was proficient in all of them and knew how to use them well. After a month, he was beginning to improve, which piqued the master's interest. Resume training. Back to your positions, Li Junquan commanded. Li Young then whispered to Li Hua, offering to give her a signal so she could block the master once, to create an opening for him. Li Hua questioned why she should, but he insisted it was just a chance to land a good attack. She agreed with the condition that he would owe her for it. Inside, Li Young knew his skills weren't enough to win outright, so he had to rely on teamwork. Li Junquan recognized the tactic. Working together, huh? Not a bad decision if it goes according to plan, he said. At Li Young's shout of now, Li Hua launched an attack. Seizing the moment, Li Young unleashed his ultimate technique learned from the Boundless, the Split Demon. The move connected successfully. Li Junquan was shocked. You blocked that? Li Young collapsed, blood oozing from his mouth. It's been 37 days. Congratulations on awakening your 6th sense. You still have a long way to go, but that's it for today's training. Li Hua grumbled about his failed plan, but Li Junquan praised Li Young's combat sense, admitting he had broken his own rule by using mana to try to stop him. Despite the small amount of mana used, Li Young's ability to judge and adapt had impressed him. The elders of the Li household would come to fear this boy in time. Li Young then recounted that Li Hua awakened her sixth sense on the 47th day, and they both graduated from Li Junquan's lessons. He spent his remaining time resting and reviewing everything he had learned. It was then that his eldest brother, Li Myongjong, arrived. Li Myongjong held the prestigious title of Twin Star, ranking nearly as a second-rank magician and martial artist. Feared and admired by many, to Li Young he was simply his eldest brother. "I'm sorry I haven't paid much attention to you lately," Myongjong said apologetically. "I've been busy." Li Young smiled and replied, "It's all right." Myongjong was surprised that Li Young recognized him immediately, despite it being their first meeting. Li Young explained that although they were half-brothers, he couldn't possibly forget the face of his eldest brother. Myongjong gently corrected him, telling him not to use the term half-brother, because regardless of different mothers, he was as much a brother as any other sibling. Thinking to himself, Myongjong noted that Li Young seemed harsh on himself, especially considering he hadn't even undergone the naming ceremony yet. Li Young quickly apologized, but Myongjong told him it was unnecessary and that there was no need for such politeness between brothers. Li Young felt warmth at his brother's kindness, recalling that Myongjong had been just as kind when he was younger. Myongjong then took something out and handed it to Li Young. "This is a gift to commemorate our first meeting. I got it when I was admitted to France's Eiffel Magic University. I think you'll get more use out of it than I will." It was nectar, a highly valuable miracle medicine, made in limited quantities at the France Magic Tower, only 500 milliliters produced per year. Li Young was overwhelmed by the precious gift. "Thank you so much, eldest brother." Myongjong observed that Li Young was different from the other siblings he had met, who all saw him as a rival. He admitted that he was glad Li Young was different, though he wasn't used to it. Li Young quickly clarified that he did see Myongjong as a rival. As a member of the Li clan, that was inevitable. But he hoped their rivalry would be a great competition, not just fraternal affection. Myongjong smiled. "All right, I look forward to the day you become my biggest rival." Li Young vowed silently that he would protect his eldest brother this time, his brother who genuinely cared for him. A few days later, the day of the second trial for the esteemed Martial Li clan arrived, the naming ceremony. The setting was the Red and Blue Island, a place whose very land shifts color depending on the mana concentration in the atmosphere. This island had been the traditional site for the clan's naming ceremony since ancient times. The rules of the ceremony were clear. The young lady and young master must survive on this island for 3 weeks to prove their worth. Each was given a device to track their location, which they were instructed to keep on at all times. The trial chamber would open 2 days after the 3-week period ended. Wishes of luck were offered to them as they prepared to begin. Before departure, Li Hua suddenly spoke up. Li Young, noticing her hesitation, asked if she had finally made up her mind about something she had been meaning to say. Surprised, Li Hua asked how he knew. He replied confidently that he could tell. She wanted to use a certain poison but was holding back. Li Hua revealed a small vial and explained, "This is poison. Its name is dreamlike trance. It only affects those under the age of 15. If exposed to air for more than 5 minutes, it evaporates. Once ingested, it causes your mana path to malfunction for a long time." When Li Young asked who had given it to her, she refused to say, then threw the vial away, making sure there was no evidence left. She declared firmly that she would beat him fairly without resorting to poison and that they both needed to take the trial seriously. Li Young responded that even if she hadn't said anything, he was going to try his best regardless. Li Hua nodded approvingly and advised him to challenge the center of the island once he got used to the environment, warning it was particularly dangerous. Li Young smirked. "I know. Are you worried about me?" "Ha! Worried? I'm worried you might die before we settle the score." They both looked up at the sky, and Li Hua turned to leave. Watching her walk away, Li Young silently affirmed to himself that his destination was not the outskirts but the center of the island. It was time to begin. True to form, the 8th child, Li Hua, had already finished her first assignment, hunting. The number of animals she had defeated was astonishing for her first practical experience. This performance was not surprising given her awakening, which had taken only 47 days. Li Junquan commented that Li Hua wasn't originally this talented. She was expected to take 2 full months to reach this level. She had decent talent, but someone had provoked her to improve much faster. The 9th, Li Young. An old man nearby questioned what Li Young was doing. Li Junquan explained that he seemed to be looking for a place to set up a hideout. The old man sneered, calling him a coward for hiding and running away, despite being an offspring of the esteemed Martial Li clan. Li Junquan interrupted, arguing that finding a hideout in such a dangerous environment was a strategic move and not something to scold. Rumors spread that the clan's expectations were high because of Li Hua's performance. The old man remarked, Being average in the esteemed martial Li clan is a sin, isn't it? Li Junquan mused aloud, reflecting on how a clan member doing something ordinary was almost laughable. He lamented the clan's decline and questioned if it had always been this way. Then he turned his thoughts back to Li Young's unusual plan of heading to the island's center, sharing the concern that he wasn't the only one wondering what Li Young intended. Meanwhile, Li Young had found something buried in the ground which seemed adequate. He burned an herb and blocked the entrance of his hideout, demonstrating impressive concealment skills. The old man watched, curious about Li Young's actions. Li Junquan, shouting with pride and excitement, declared, "Always unpredictable." Li Young thought to himself there was no reason to reveal this, especially since he could use his boundless skills here on the island to salvage as much as possible. He prepared a tea made from mana herbs he had learned to concoct from following a druggist in his previous life. He mused that no one in their right mind would think such a grotesque-looking tea was made from mana herbs. He remembered that in his previous life, he couldn't even afford a cheap elixir. Now, knowing the island's abundant mana, the tea would be more effective after he increased his total mana through mana arts. With a sigh, he drank the hellish-tasting tea, marking the beginning of a lonely 3-week fight for survival. On the 18th day of the naming ceremony, Li Myongjung was in his office when Yu Jung-heon, the vice leader of the Azure Sword Squad, directly affiliated with Li Myongjung's martial artist unit, entered. "Sorry to interrupt you," Yu Jung-heon said. Li Myongjung responded, "It must be bad news, it seems." Yu Jung-heon explained, "It seems like a large vagabond group has entered South Korea's northern regions. I expected them to make their way through the unexplored region, but instead, they are heading directly south. Only 2 days away from them are the Li clan's Mana Stone mines." Li Myongjung's eyes narrowed. Vagabonds usually go through unexplored regions, committing all kinds of crimes. There's no way those hyena would enter our territory without some kind of scheme in mind. They may look like vagabonds, but it could be just a disguise. It's possible that some other force is behind them. There was intel about the Nine Dragons stronghold moving their forces towards the northern border as well. He reflected quietly. Zhongyuan's giant organization, the Nine Dragons stronghold, shared the border leading to the unexplored region. They had regularly provoked the Li clan by stepping into their territories. Thinking to himself, Li Myongjung considered that news about his father being away must have leaked. There was no better timing for their enemies to strike now. He wondered if their intelligence branch was aware of this too. "I was able to find out about this more quickly than the branch, because of your orders to keep an eye on him. Now cooperate with the intelligence branch to find out more about this matter. I think there's more to it. I hope it's nothing more than a bad feeling." Elsewhere, someone hoped that 2 nights would be enough to kill an illegitimate child. Meanwhile, on the island, Li Young was engaged in a fierce battle with a 7th-rank monster, a dragon named Draco. Using his mana and split demon moves, he slashed the dragon off. "Dragons are definitely on a different level," Li Young breathed. "Had I fought this when I just got here, I would have been knocked out immediately." He realized he had reached the dragon's territory 19 days after arriving on the Red and Blue Island. But staying here longer would be a waste of time. There was another reason he had come this far. Suddenly, he sensed something else. As I thought, an 8th-rank monster lizard man. Something had felt off since yesterday. Lizard men monsters, only supposed to appear on the outskirts, were now here in the heart of the island. They attacked and then ran away. Lizard men weren't smart and were lower rank. Were they being affected by something external? If that was the case, Li Young knew it. He ran and slashed another monster. Something happening once may be a coincidence, but twice now? I better follow them. Meanwhile, a confrontation martial fight gathered all the people of the Li clan. Trainer Nishiyama Shuyo observed, "Those of the esteemed martial Li clan's bloodline sure are peculiar. Just how did a boy so young manage to take on so many monsters alone? Though it should be fine. He's just a little kid at the end of the day, one who will surely fall for such an obvious trap. I'm sure I won't have to resort to plan B." Hidden in the trees, Li Young watched him. He was a bit doubtful because the trap was so blatantly obvious, but it really was a trap. The trainer had the ability to control monsters. Was he a trainer? How could an outsider possibly get in here? No, it wasn't impossible. If there was a teleportation spell circle set up here, that would mean this was the work of a Li clan member. Should he just notify the household and wait for reinforcements? No, it would be too late by the time they arrived, and he wouldn't be able to find out who was behind this. That left only one option: use stealth arts, hide his presence, and take the trainer down himself. Li Young attacked, but Nishiyama Shuyo was able to detect it, thanks to the danger detection artifact he possessed. Now, Li Young, with his sword in hand, stood in front of Nishiyama Shuyo at a distance. Nishiyama Shuyo spoke first. The illegitimate child of the esteemed Marshall Lee clan, you're much better than I anticipated. Lee Young glared back. Perhaps it's you who's weak. Without hesitation, Nishiyama Shuyo gave the command. Attack him! At his order, monsters surged toward Lee Young. Lee Young activated the Svenstar Sword's third form, True Azure. However, something was wrong. He couldn't move his body anymore. Nishiyama Shuyo let out an amused laugh. Ha ha, you've fallen for it. That array is the most advanced type of array. There's even one that blocks off the mana circles of martial artists. You are nothing but a powerless kid without mana. Meet your pathetic little death, unable to move. Confident in his trap, Nishiyama Shuyo began to walk away, expecting Lee Young to die. But Lee Young's voice cut through the air. Block my mana then. I can just use my mana paths instead. And in that moment, Lee Young managed to release himself from Nishiyama Shuyo's advanced array. He pointed his sword straight at him. Have you given up on running away? Nishiyama Shuyo froze, shocked. How did you break free? I'm not going to tell you. I've already notified the household about you. So, surrender. A desperate expression twisted Nishiyama Shuyo's face. Kwe, I will eliminate you and regain my freedom. Lee Young frowned. What? What are you talking about? Before he could finish his sentence, radiating mana started spreading out from the trunk of a nearby tree. The shockwave struck Lee Young, knocking him to the ground, blood dripping from his mouth. Struggling to lift his head, Lee Young gritted his teeth. Could it be the Red and Blue Islands guardian, Turtlehead Mountain? Realization dawned. It's basically a third rank on a nightmare of a monster. You're telling me that this third-rate trainer tamed that monster? Nishiyama Shuyo grinned. You're quick to catch on. I don't have perfect control over it yet, but it should definitely carry out the one order to kill you. You should give up on fighting it, just accept your fate. Fallen to the ground on one knee, Lee Young forced himself to calm down, mind racing. Let's calm down. If he doesn't have perfect control over it yet, that means I just need to catch the trainer instead. In order to be able to do anything against Turtlehead Mountain, this is the only option. He reached for something, recalling a desperate plan. I made it just in case, but I never expected to use it like this. The medicine that was banned because its side effects were too intense when stacked against the positive effects. The mana booster. His thoughts didn't stop there. One more thing. The technique Aunt Gyeongha said to only use in the most dangerous of situations. Now. The heaven-defying technique. He pushed his battered body up. I didn't even get a scratch in, but it still stopped it. I'll take it down with this. That's the Turtlehead Mountain's cry. Fear. I can't move because of the mana waves, damn it. But then, a faint pulse stirred in him. My dark energy resisted the fear. Now was the moment. Boundless first technique, Split Demon. The technique tore through, but it came with a cost. Lee Young collapsed to the ground, coughing up blood. I don't have time. I won't be able to move for a while because of the side effects of the mana booster and the heaven-defying technique. In 10 seconds, I need to find the trainer. 8 seconds. His sharp eyes scanned the battlefield. 4. A thread. His heart pounded. 3 seconds. He caught sight of him. At the very last moment, I'm not close enough. Just barely. But Lee Young refused to give up. If only I'd grown a bit more. Then I'll just make my sword longer. And with a swift slash, his extended sword struck down Nishiyama Shuyo. Panting, barely able to remain conscious, Lee Young told himself, I need to take care of myself first. It's really over if I pass out right now. Aunt Gyeonghwa said to drink this if I ever used the technique. It's a good thing I brought the nectar with me. Every muscle in his body screamed, but before any monster could get too close, he knew he had to deal with this one final matter. Lee Young woke up to a strange whiteness surrounding him. Where am I? He wondered aloud. His thoughts immediately went to the trainer and the Turtlehead Mountain. A wave of pain swept through his body, making it feel as if he was falling apart from the inside. A monstrous voice echoed nearby. So it has come to this. Even individually, those things are too dangerous to be consumed by humans, yet both are inside this one human. I hoped he wouldn't wake up, but now, feed it. Lee Young looked down and saw a purple beehive. This is a purple glowstone of clarity? You're not meant to be eaten. It is what will eat you. A new era is upon us. Become stronger, human child. Become stronger so that you do not get devoured by time. Just then, Li Hua came across him. Ah, you're awake, she said. Hua, Lee Young greeted her weakly. I'm older than you, so I'll let it go this once, she teased gently. Since you're not doing well, how are you feeling? My entire body is a mess, but my mana has increased a lot, Lee Young replied. Did I really take the purple glowstone of clarity? A few of my mana paths are broken, my intestines are twisted, every bone is fractured, and some muscles have broken down. Not bad, I guess. Li Hua's expression turned concerned. That's bad. The purple glowstone of clarity was supposed to be something Li Hua would take herself. It was an incredible miracle medicine, reinforcing the body, increasing mana, and providing resistance against poisons and curses. It was something she had wanted to obtain here, but she admitted feeling a bit guilty. "What are you doing here?" Li Young asked. Their eldest brother, Li Myungjung, appeared. "Are you all right? I better treat your mana first. I brought some potions," he said. "It's all right. Just the potion will do," Li Young said as he drank it. Li Myungjung turned to Li Hua. "Will you excuse us for a minute?" "All right," she replied. Li Myungjung's tone grew serious. "If you had died, I would have annihilated the trainer as well as all organizations involved with him, no matter how large or powerful they might be." Li Young smiled weakly. "Haha, that's nice to hear. What you did was something every martial artist should try to emulate," Li Myungjung said. "However, I cannot think of it in a positive light as your brother." Li Young admitted, "I didn't expect the Turtlehead Mountain to show up. I'm sorry. I would have waited had I known." "It's good that you know the difference between arrogance and confidence," Li Myungjung said. "Eldest brother, I took care of the trainer, so I assume I have rights to his information," Li Young said. "I thought you'd say that," Li Myungjung replied. "The trainer was almost a 5th-rank sorcerer who once dabbled in Onmyoto. It seems he was expelled after trying to get sorcery banned. He must have activated advanced sorcery while the Turtlehead Mountain was sleeping. I assume he was trying to get rid of you and make it look like a monster attack." Li Young frowned. "You haven't figured out who is behind this yet. I think it'll be hard at the moment. I wasn't the final target. They are after you." "What makes you think that?" Li Myungjung asked. "I think their target was to damage your reputation by making it seem like you were unable to detect invaders and slow to react to the urgent situation," Li Young explained. Li Myungjung sighed. "Ha, you're right. Goodness, what shall I do?" "Are you all right?" Li Young asked. "I'm all right. It'll hurt my image a bit, but it won't make a huge difference. I can't leave my position empty for long. I better go back." He patted Li Young's head. "Eldest brother, why don't we do this? Let's say you predicted the trainer's invasion and gave me orders ahead of time. In response, I will testify accordingly. Then it will seem like you prepared for something even the intelligence branch couldn't catch." Li Myungjung considered it. "But it would be better for you if you tell the truth." "If I do, people will be more wary of me and see me as competition," Li Young replied. "All right, I see that it will benefit both of us. What is it that you want?" "Entry permit to the library," Li Young said excitedly. "I think 3 days should do." "You arrogant little kid," Li Myungjung said, but he agreed. "Thanks. There's no need to thank me. We are both benefiting from this. I'm sure you would have thought of ways to overcome this situation even without me, isn't that right? This must be the Azure Sword Squad. I really should get going." Their brother left. Li Young smiled. "I'll keep it a secret. He sure is clever." Li Hua said. "The conversation must have gone well enough." "Yup," Li Young answered. "So which test are you going to go for? It's been 3 weeks, so they should all be open." "What about you?" Li Young asked. "I asked first," Li Hua replied. "I'll tell you if you tell me." Li Hua smiled. "Which do you think is the most difficult one? So what about you?" "The Hall of Fighting." "There is such a test? Is it not one that's on the outskirts?" "It is." Li Hua frowned. "I'm disappointed. I thought you were better than that, going to the outskirts. There's no point in even talking to you now. I thought he was better than the others. No, better than even me." There was a prejudice that the difficulty of a test depended on its location. Li Young thought to himself that she must think he was taking the easy route. "Well, I don't care." They went their separate ways. Li Young tried to recall the location. "I can't remember too well, but I feel like it was somewhere around here. The cave that was hidden here for the second assignment of the naming ceremony, the Hall of Fighting." He lit a fire on a wood log. "It may look like a regular wall at first glance, but this is no ordinary wall," he said, eyes glistening with joy as he found it. Li Young entered the hall in solemn silence. As he crossed the threshold, he turned his palm upward and conjured a small cut, allowing blood to drip freely into the ceremonial bowl before him. "As a descendant of the esteemed Marshal Li clan, I accept the challenge of the forefather," he declared, his voice steady with resolve. "I beg thee, heed mine request." There was only one challenge within the Hall of Fighting: to win in battle against oneself. An unlimited number of attempts were allowed, but even if one chose to surrender, they would not be permitted to leave until they succeeded. Let's begin, Li Young said. The moment the words left his mouth, a flash of cold steel met his neck. His head was severed. Darkness swallowed him whole. He gasped as consciousness returned, his body whole again. His eyes flickered in confusion. Was my head cut off just now? He muttered, incredulous. I see. It's an illusion. I can't die within the Hall of Fighting, but it feels so damn realistic. He took a moment to catch his breath. Most ordinary people, he reasoned, would have lost their minds from the sheer realism of the experience. But that wasn't the problem that troubled him now. This means I'm capable of doing that, he murmured. The Hall of Fighting drew out 100% of his current potential. Every hidden skill, even those he hadn't yet consciously mastered. That illusion. It had used techniques he didn't know he could perform. If that was the case, then the strike from before should have been blockable. All right, let's do this one more time. On his third attempt, a blade pierced his abdomen. On his fifth, even though he managed to redirect the illusion's sword, he was choked to death. The 10th attempt ended in another fatal blow. 13th, 23rd, countless more. By what he guessed was the 70th, no, perhaps already his 80th attempt, Li Young finally understood. I've come to learn everything about myself, he whispered between pants. My greatest strengths, they're not just my skill or speed. It's my flexibility, my ability to adapt to irregularities, and the freedom to break through expectations. Every time he faced the illusion, it became more like him, matching his movements, reflecting his mindset. Stupid, he cursed aloud. I let my guard down on purpose. Idiot! He moved swiftly now, delivering a final blow. Split demon! As the illusion vanished, a surge of energy pulsed through him. Passing the Hall of Fighting granted him access to a hidden ability belonging to the martial Li clan. In his previous life, the ability he had received was Reinforce, the most common one. But this time, he whispered, trembling, waiting to see what would awaken. Outside the hall, Li Young's uncle paced with increasing impatience. I thought that brat would be out by now, he grumbled. How many more incidents is that kid going to cause during the naming ceremony? His eyes narrowed suddenly. There's been a change in the mana density. It's opening. The sealed gate flared open. Li Young emerged, stumbling slightly, covered in dirt and dried blood. Li Young, his uncle shouted, rushing forward. Are you okay? Wake up! He caught the boy in his arms. To his disbelief, Li Young groaned, not in pain, but in hunger. I want food, he muttered. His uncle growled through clenched teeth, shaking with equal parts relief and fury. Later, within the family residence, Manhwa stormed toward him, her expression a blend of worry and scolding. Young master, do you know how worried I was? She exclaimed. You challenged the ancient Hall of Fighting, the one the forefather created on Turtlehead Mountain? She embraced him tightly, wrapping him in her warmth. Her relief was palpable. Nanny, I'm covered in dirt, Li Young said wearily. I've been out for the past month. Manhwa pulled back, her eyes softening despite her earlier anger. Even though I was planning to scold you when you returned, I'm just glad you're back, young master. Thank you, Li Young said, managing a faint smile. I'll prepare the bath for you, she said, and I'll bring out the food as soon as you're done. He turned to her as she stepped away. Hey, Nanny, where's my aunt? Manhwa hesitated. Well, about that, she said quietly. Li Young frowned. What is it? Before she could finish, a familiar voice interrupted. Heh, you're back? Li Young turned sharply. What happened to you? His aunt smiled faintly, brushing aside the concern in his voice. Sorry, it's good to see that you're fine, though. But Li Young's eyes had already narrowed. More importantly, how did you manage to increase your total mana? Your body shouldn't be able to handle all of it. He stepped forward, voice firm. Hurry and sit down. We need to talk, Aunt. She laughed lightly, brushing off his concern. Ha ha, I'm fine. But Li Young wasn't so easily convinced. I didn't think she'd go this far for me, he thought. The reason his aunt was here, he realized now, was because she had caused a scene in front of both the elder and his eldest brother. It was you, she cried, emotions surging. You did this, again and again, just like always. Her voice trembled as her anger cracked into sorrow. I'm sorry, child. Whenever I think about those people causing trouble for you, I just couldn't hold back my anger. I just got angry at the thought that I wouldn't be able to see you again. It felt like something was choking me. Li Young looked at her in silence. To be honest, I still can't completely trust her, he admitted to himself. However, I've noticed that I've started treating her as a real part of my family. He gave her a faint nod. All right, let's just accept it. I'll get you out soon. Just wait a little longer. His aunt blinked in surprise. Huh? How? Just don't push yourself. I won't, he assured her. You should be able to come out soon. I'll be back to see you again. Later, in another part of the estate, a calm voice greeted someone's arrival. Welcome, Huiyan said. A tall figure stepped forward. You must have waited a long time for me. Not at all, she replied with a warm smile. I've already prepared hot spring water and a meal for you to enjoy. Got it, came the father's reply. Li Young watched from a distance. I thought I'd grown pretty strong after the whole naming ceremony incident. And yet I still can't tell how big the difference is between my father and me. Their eyes met, and for a moment, it felt as if his thoughts had been read. I've told you, his father said. I don't need someone who refuses to fight for the family. However, it seems there is only one child of mine who has the desire to beat me. Who is he talking about? Li Young wondered. The eldest brother? He had thought he'd hidden his emotions well, but his father had seen through them. The banquet was unusually grand, even for a naming ceremony. It was rare, even for the esteemed Marshall Li clan. Among the guests, one person stood out, a figure famous for being the youngest leader of a magic tower. That's the Onmyoto chief. No, I think he's the vice chief now. A servant approached quietly. Excuse me, young master. The patriarch is looking for you. Li Young's heart skipped. Father is looking for me? Yes, right this way. Why is father asking for me personally? I hope it's nothing too serious. He followed the servant and stepped into a chamber where both his father and eldest brother awaited. You called for me, father? He asked. Eldest brother? Don't tell me. His father wasted no time. I'm sure you're well aware of why we called you here. We're here to talk about the naming ceremony. According to Myeongjung, you were ordered to capture an outsider. This event, I'm sure you're behind it. He already knew. Yes, that is correct, Li Young admitted calmly. That's why I offered a deal to my eldest brother, the right to enter the library for 4 days in exchange for preventing any potential problems. His father nodded. Considering your involvement in this incident, I will forgive you for your false reports. However, there will not be a next time. Yes, I understand, Li Young replied. Turning to his eldest son, the patriarch continued. Myeongjung, expect an appropriate punishment in the near future. Since this banquet is yours to handle, return to the hall and take care of it. Yes, I will, Myeongjung said before departing. Li Young watched him leave. I hope he'll be okay. His father's voice brought his focus back. Excluding your false report, the resolution of this incident was all your accomplishment. I'm sure you will receive the promised reward you discussed with Myeongjung. Lastly, for discovering the Hall of Fighting, I will give you a reward as well. If that's the case. Li Young's thoughts trailed as the ceremony resumed. The patriarch turned to the assembled guests. Thank you to all those who came a long way to attend this event. This banquet was held to give our blessings to these 2 children. We shall now proceed with the naming ceremony. He turned toward the 8th child. Hua, come forth. Hua stepped forward with confidence. As you have been selected by the Holy Sword, I am sure you will always light the way for others. In hopes of helping you continue on this path of light, I have given you the name Seo-hyun. Thank you! Hua, now Seo-hyun, responded with bright enthusiasm. The patriarch's gaze shifted. Next, 9th child, Young, come forth. Li Young stepped forward silently. It's a completely different reaction from the Steel's selection ritual, but that makes no difference. His father's voice rang out clearly. While you are smart and strong, you are also flexible and unyielding to others. The same way a master blacksmith forges blades out of blocks of steel, you have trained yourself to reach your potential. As such, there is no better way to describe you than this. I have given you the name Cheol. Li Young, now Li Cheol, bowed his head respectfully. In the past, he gave me the name Cheol so that I would live life as strong as steel. However, the meaning behind it has changed. His eyes burned with determination. I won't stop until I reach the top of the esteemed Marshall Li clan. My name is Li Cheol, he declared. Thank you! Inside the cold, confined room, Li Young's aunt thrashed in frustration, her voice hoarse and ragged with desperation. Ugh! I want to leave! It's cramped in here, damn it! I don't even get to see him receive his name! She screamed, pounding the walls. Her voice cracked with emotion. He told me he'd get me out, so where the hell is he? Help me! I want to leave! A metallic click interrupted her outburst. The door creaked open, and a guard stepped in. You can come out, he said plainly. Huh? She blinked, disoriented. They told us that while you will be contacted regarding your punishment later, you are free to leave for now. A moment of stunned silence passed before she exploded in joy. Yay! Please don't kick the door down, the guard added quickly as she rushed forward. Wait one moment, please! Outside, she froze as she spotted a familiar face. Huh? Baby! She gasped, her voice cracking with disbelief. Did you really get me out? Lee Young, now newly named Lee Cheol, nodded calmly. Yes, of course. But how? She trailed off, noticing the scroll he held out. Huh? What's this? Aunt, Cheol said with a composed tone. You're indebted to me. She read the scroll aloud, her voice trembling in disbelief. Lee Gayongha is to be appointed as an elder and work as the master of the 9th child. Lee Cheol? Cheol offered a slight bow. Please take good care of me, master. Nearby, Nanny Moon Gawa observed the interaction with a soft smile. It starts today, right? Cheol nodded. Yes, today marks the start. She looked at him with quiet pride. I can't believe you're already 13. Cheol offered a small wave as he walked off. All right, I'll see you soon. Now, it's the start of my life as a pupil. Whispers followed him as he arrived at the academy grounds. Is that him? One person asked. Yeah, you're right. That's the 9th child, Lee Cheol, someone confirmed. I heard rumors about his steel selection ritual and naming ceremony, another added, voice tinged with cynicism. He's just a damn bastard who got lucky. Wouldn't it be hard to make that kind of progress at the naming ceremony with just luck? Someone else countered. Yeah, I'm curious about that too. Cheol walked through the murmurs, jaw tight. For how long do they plan to talk? This, that, I can't take it anymore. Suddenly, voices shifted direction. Look, it's the 8th child. I knew it. Children from the main family are different from the start. Cheol turned his head and saw her, his older sister, Seo-hyun. The contrast in how people treated her versus him couldn't have been clearer. Hey, she greeted awkwardly. Hey, Cheol replied. It's been a while. Well, I hope you're not too bothered by what happened at the naming ceremony. The naming ceremony? He asked. You know, when I said I was disappointed? Oh, I guess she's not too cold of a person yet, he thought. Forget it. Don't worry about it. Really? Are you sure? She asked, relief washing over her face. That's a relief. I thought you were petty. Cheol blinked. What do you mean by that? She chuckled nervously, but before they could continue, a voice called out sharply. Attention! We'll be appointing you to your classes. All named pupils are to gather in front of us, making sure to maintain their current formations. Cheol's nerves suddenly prickled. What should I do? I'm starting to get nervous. It'll be bad if we get assigned to the wrong class. He understood why the scrutiny was so intense. Cadets were trained for 3 years, and class allocation could determine everything. Each level was divided into 5 groups, with the most talented placed in higher classes. Lady Lee Seo-hyun, the official called out. You've been assigned to Class 1. Congratulations. Thanks, Seo-hyun said confidently. As expected, Cheol noted. Seo-hyun was assigned to Class 1. Next, young Master Lee Cheol. Here, the official said, handing him his designation. Cheol accepted it quietly. Looks like he's disappointed. I knew this would happen, but who would have thought they'd set me up from the start? Class 5, also known as the garbage dump. It was where those expected to drop out were pushed into. It was no coincidence. Members of the main family were supposed to be placed according to their naming ceremony results. The elders, or perhaps Lady Bak, must have orchestrated this. Although people would consider this a setback, this could be for the better. Less trouble for me. Young Master Lee Cheol, Class 5 is this way, the instructor guided. All right, let's go. He glanced over. Seo-hyun stared at him, aghast. Why are you in Class 5? Why aren't you complaining? But I really am fine, he told her, voice low. What's more important is, damn it, I'm in Class 5. I wonder if I can even graduate. Around him, frustrated murmurs rose. What am I supposed to tell my dad? There's no way I'm in Class 5. The main family took all the good spots. Unfortunate. I can't believe members of the esteemed Marshall Lee clan can afford to have such an attitude. Then a voice addressed him nervously. You're the youngest child of the main family, right? Cheol turned. A boy with soft features and nervous eyes stood before him. Yeah, I am, he answered. I knew it. I've always wanted to introduce myself. The boy bowed quickly. My name is Kim Han. I'm the son of a small blacksmith family that works with the esteemed Marshall Lee clan. It's an honor to be in the same class as you, young master. Kim Han? I don't think I've heard that name in the past. Why me? Because you're the center of attention, Han explained, as if reading his mind. That's why I've always wanted to meet you. It doesn't look like he's lying, Cheol thought. Kim Han, was it? What do you think about being allocated to Class 5? Han considered the question. I guess they determined that my current skills are suited for Class 5. Even so, there's no way of telling what might happen in the future. A voice cut through their conversation. You pass. What? Cheol looked up, puzzled. Suddenly, a group of older students approached. Hello, newbies, one of them greeted. It's nice meeting you. The classroom buzzed with energy as the older students gathered to welcome the new cadets. Hello, newbies, it's nice meeting you, one of them called out brightly. Let's do our best together, added another. Yeah, and feel free to ask questions, said a third with enthusiasm. The welcoming atmosphere was interrupted by a more composed figure stepping forward. A man with a disciplined posture and a calm, steady voice addressed the class. I believe introductions are in order, he began. I am Jongho, Class 5's instructor. As we have new members today, we'll skip the lecture and start with a short interview. Lee Cheol watched silently from where he stood. He's still full of determination and enthusiasm, he noted. In my past life, he even instructed me privately when I had trouble keeping up. After conducting brief interviews with the new students, Instructor Jongho gave a firm nod. That's it for the interview. Inha, take charge and teach the material to the new kids. A cheerful boy stepped forward. Okay, instructor. He turned to face the group with a nervous grin. Hello, everyone. My name is Choi Inha. I'm embarrassed to say this, but I've been held back 2 times, so this is my 2nd year as the class leader. Noticing how stiff the new cadets were, he added, You guys must be tired from standing up for so long, right? Feel free to sit down. Inha then explained the next step. We're going to elect the class leader. All of us may be cadets here, but we're put into missions quite often. The class leader effectively acts as the squad captain. Aside from the instructors who educate us and help us train, the class leaders are given full authority. One student hesitantly raised a hand. How do we pick the class leader? Oh, I guess I should have explained that first, Inha chuckled sheepishly. I don't know how other classes do it, but we always decide with light duels among ourselves and vote on who the leader should be afterward. He clapped his hands once. Now then, let's begin the duels. It's to test each other's strength, so the use of mana is forbidden. After each duel, there will be a short break. Are you kidding me? Lee Cheol's voice cut through the room like a blade. Inha blinked. Young Master Lee Cheol, are you dissatisfied with something I said? Cheol stepped forward, calm but sharp. I'm dissatisfied with everything. Everything you said and are doing. His voice hardened. Get a grip. This is the esteemed Marshall Lee clan. If you want a roleplay school, you shouldn't have come here. You should have gone to a normal school in the safe zone instead. Inha looked taken aback. You're being too radical. I just meant it as a more peaceful way to work this out. Cheol narrowed his eyes. I guess you just